أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
سيدنا محمد عبد الله ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Praise be to Allah, the creator of mankind, and peace and blessings on Prophet Muhammed sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, peace be upon him. So today we said we want to dedicate this event to speak about the Rasul Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as talking about him. Who is he? So that's the question that we can start. My lecture is of two parts. One part is to present the biography, and the second part, which is a PowerPoint presentation, is to take you into the different people who prescribed him, who spoke about Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And of course, it is important for us to speak about Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, but what is also important is to see how non-Muslims spoke about him. Philosophers, leaders, different people represent all religions, and so see what they say about him. So first, let me start with the biography of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. His birth, the date of his birth, it was said that that's the majority of the scholars. They confirmed Rabi' al-Awwal, 12 of Rabi' al-Awwal. The year, we have two different opinions, whether it's 570 or 571. Life in Mecca, as we know, that Mecca was the center for the people of Arabia, because from the time that Ibrahim alayhi salam either built the Kaaba or reconstructed the Kaaba, from that time different tribes came to live there, and actually not from the time of the Kaaba, but even from the time that the Zamzam water was discovered there. And I think you know the background of that. So when there was water, people started to come and live there. Then Ibrahim alayhi salam built the Kaaba, and then people started to come and take a trip to see the Kaaba, and the Arabs organized like annual conference, where they used to have exhibitions and a competition in poetry. So it was known for many things. But throughout the time, people started to forget about the tradition of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and they innovated something, throughout the life. Every time a person was important, they used to make an idol of him after death and take him as someone who is connected with God. So this person is given a divine nature, even though that this is an idol. So time by time, Mecca was surrounded by over 360 idols, represent different people who happened to live during that era. So it was very important for a change. As you know, that Ibrahim alayhi salam revived the tradition of the worship of the Creator without idols, without using any other object. He revived the monotheistic, that God is one and has no partners and need to be worshipped alone. People started to ignore this tradition, so there was a need for change. And here is, you have the birth of a child from a noble parents. So when we speak of the parents of our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the father is Abdullah, and Abdullah was the son of Abu Talib, of Abdul Muttalib, and Abdul Muttalib was very influential leader in Mecca, and he was given the job of as-siqaya. As-siqaya means like you arrange water and hospitality for the people who will come to the Kaaba. So it was a very important job, and he assumed this position, and he was from the tribe of Quraysh, al-Qurashi. So when we say that Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he is al-Qurashi, but his ancestry end up with the tribe of Kilab, and this tribe, you can trace it back to the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, because Ismail, he married a woman from that area. So you can trace the ancestry of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam back to Ismail, and Ismail is the son of Ibrahim, so he can be traced back to Ibrahim alayhi salam. And the mother is Amina, and Amina, she is known as Amina bint Wahab, and this tribe also was well known in the region, in that region. Abdullah, after the time he married Amina, he took a trip, and on the way he died. So Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was born 6 months after the death of his father. So it means he was born as an orphan. But don't be surprised that this orphan was set to give support to all orphans who happened to be born after his birth. So he was born as an orphan as his father died. So his mother assumed the responsibility, but there was a tradition, since the father is not alive, the tradition was that the grandfather will be the guardianship, though the mother will assume the bringing up of the child. But There was a tradition in Mecca, the tradition that big or influential tribes, they want the child to be grown strong. So in order to do that, they would take him from the town and let him live in the desert area. And they used to hire women to nurse the child. So, I think we said, I think you know the name of the lady? Halima, okay. So, Halima Saadiya, she took the responsibility of taking the boy, live in the desert, and this is where Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam spent his childhood, but he was still connected to his mother, and his mother died when he was 2 years old. And after that, the grandfather died, and his uncle Abu Talib became as the guardian and the person in charge of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Historians speak of some miracles or something strange happened at the time of the birth of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. First, the Persian fire. The Persians, as you know, that they worship fire. Part of the worship is to have one person or more in charge of keeping the fire on. But suddenly, they associated an incident that happened at the time of the birth of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that the fire was put off suddenly by itself. So this was Kisra. Kisra is a Persian. Kisra, it was said that he was sitting on his arch, and his Kisra was known, he has a huge arch, and it was said that his arch started to shake. So this incident happened during the time of the birth of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Also, something happened in Mecca that was not normal. When Abu Jahl, out of joy of the birth of Muhammad, what he did, he freed his slave, woman slave. And this was not known in Mecca for a person to do that. The name was given. You will not find any person in Mecca at that time whose name was Muhammad. So even the name was chosen by Abdul Muttalib. The name was chosen as something never happened in Mecca. There are things like Halima Saadiya, she mentioned something happened, that whether this authentic or not, but she mentioned that once she noticed that two people came and took Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He was a child, still a child. They took him to an area. They opened his chest, and they did something in the area of the heart, and then they put everything back. Of course, you can say, oh, how that thing happened and that, but always remember that if anything happened by the power of Allah, then we give up. We just stay there. We don't know, oh, how that thing will happen. If it is with the power of Allah, everything can happen. So this is something that Halima would relate, that I saw this happening. When Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam started to grow up, so even though that Abu Talib was an influential leader of Mecca, in Mecca, but they said he was not that much rich. So Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam started to help his uncle in taking care of the sheep. And then he started to help him in traveling. So Abu Talib used to take a caravan, and he used to go, as we see in the Quran, إِلَى فِيهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. So there were 2 trips for the Meccans. They used to do business by going to the area of Yemen and then the area of Sham, which is today, you can speak about the area of Sham, of Jordan, Iraq, and Syria, and Palestine, and Lebanon, all these. It used to be called the area of Sham. So they used to go there. So once he was on a trip to Syria, and something happened. He noticed that there was a monk, when they were resting in the Sham area, a monk came and approached Abu Talib, and he says to him, "Who is this boy?" And Abu Talib says, "It's my son." And the man says, "I'm interested to know him more." Well, not Abu Talib, to know him more. So Abu Talib, okay, he said, "Okay, can I invite both of you to dinner?" So he invited them. And there, the monk, they called Bahira, is called as Bahira. And this story is authentic in this era, that the monk started to check the shoulder of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he observed the seal of prophethood. Now the monk told Abu Talib, he says, he is not your son. So Abu Talib said, yeah, he is not my son. How do you know that? He said, this boy will have very important affairs. He will play an important role when he grew up, and you take good care of him. So what do you mean that? He said, when he arrived, I noticed a cloud protecting him. And this cloud would walk along with him. And in our teachings, this Rahib Bahira, he was a man of Christianity, and he had some knowledge of Christianity and Judaism. And he says, we have in our religion that says there will be a prophet from the peninsula area who will appear there. And one of the signs that we learned, that this man, when the weather is hot, a cloud would protect him. And this man has the seal of prophethood, and I saw the both signs in him. These are things, we hear about it, and again we say if it is by the power of Allah, it means Allah has a plan. The growing up of this boy was something of interest for the Meccans, that he was working from his childhood. He never was engaged or played with bad people, and he never drank alcohol. So, of course, Abu Bakr also, he would speak of himself, say, I never had alcohol even before Islam. But this man, that he is straightforward, he is honest, he is sincere, he was not involved in any shame incident, and he was known to be an honest and sincere person, to a degree that when Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, when she observed his way of his business in going with her caravans and taking care of the caravan, making sure that the business is booming and successful and the trip is successful, the caravan is protected. And Khadija was an influential lady in Mecca, so she was very impressed by this young man, and she indirectly proposed marriage, and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam ended up, when he was 25 years, he ended up marrying her, and she was older than him. So he continued, you can say that this kind of life or this kind of marriage created in him or provided him with many opportunities to start his own search for the truth. He started to see his people, what they are doing, and it was said that he never bowed to an idol, even though it was common, but for him, he never did that. And he started to reflect on the situation of the people, and he took time off from the business, and he started to take a kind of isolation. This is what we call حُبِّبَ إِلَيْهِ الْخَلَاء. So he would isolate himself from the people. He would go to a ghar. The people who went for Hajj, they are aware of the area, and they try to climb the mountain to see this ghar, which is not that much like a cave or something, but it is an area that he would take his food, he would go there, and he would sit. And you will find some report that he would spend nights there. Was it safe? So it means the area was popular and was known to be safe, because he would spend the night there and just reflecting on the creation and the creation and the creators. Until the first time that he received the revelation. Now this revelation, you need to pay attention to that. It was something very hard on him. We know that he was illiterate, like he had no knowledge of reading. Writing, reading, has no knowledge. And then he heard this voice. And we know the rest of the story, that this voice was the beginning of the revelation of the Quran. Something that I read, and they said it was authentic, that Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam later, when after he received the revelation of the Quran and he started his activities, he would say that I knew a stone in Mecca, that this stone used to relate salam to me every time I pass by, but I don't know where is the location of this stone now. Like he started to remember something, that things happen to him that is not ordinary, or that's not normal for ordinary people. Never think of the Prophet as a machine, because when you say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose this person to be the messenger of Allah, and then when you say, well, he lived his life as honest, sincere, never had alcohol, never bad-mouthed people, and he was honest and sincere. And some Muslims, they say, oh yeah, we know because Allah prepared him. Well, when we say that, then you are not really speaking about a human. Then it became something else when you say Allah prepared him. But this man, by nature, he observed the life of the people, and he chose a different approach to the religion, and he attempted to revive the Abrahamic tradition. So let me now go to this presentation. So we need to turn. I'm sure I'll be able to read it. So this is where we start here. The cartoonists. Of course, we know that it was a very controversial subject here, that to present Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam as a mean person. But the people who had the knowledge, the philosophers, they adore him. And we say billion of people, they bear witness him a messenger of Allah. Let's move to the next. So, next. This is the Britannica. And when you read it, that's what it says here. A massive detail in the early sources show that he was an honest and upright man who had gained the respect and loyalty of others who were likewise honest and upright men. This is in volume 12. Next. This is George Bernard Shaw. He is a very well-known writer and orator and philosopher. He read about Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this, he says, if any religion had the chance of ruling over England, nay Europe, within the next 100 years, it could be Islam. And then another saying, I have always held the religion of Muhammed in high estimation because of its wonderful vitality. It is the only religion which appears to me to possess that assimilating capacity to the changing phase of existence which can make itself appeal to every age. And I have studied him, the wonderful man, and in my opinion, far from being an antichrist, he must be called the savior of humanity. there is one thing you need to pay attention. Many personalities and leaders in the world, you can read their biography in two different ways. Like someone would write the good and someone would write the bad. And both historians. But when it comes to our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, you will not find the opposite. You will find only one seerah. There was no person in Arabia who traced his life in a different way and presented it to us. Therefore, for a man like George Bernard Shaw, when he wanted to read about Muhammad, there is only one set written by people, and no one wrote the opposite. So therefore, he managed to expose himself to the reality of life of the Prophet. So let's continue here. I believe that if a man like him were to assume the dictatorship of the modern world, he would succeed in solving its problems in a way that would bring it the much needed peace and happiness. It's a very serious statement. And I have prophesied about the faith of Muhammad that it would be acceptable to the Europe of tomorrow as it is beginning to be acceptable to the Europe of today. Now, look at, you read this statement and you read the activities of the so-called Al-Qaeda and the terrorists and that, and really you can get the sense that someone is behind those people. Someone behind them, feeding them with money and that, because that's the only way to put Islam down. This is the man who's saying that Islam can enter Europe easily. But what stopped Islam of entering Europe in the way that George Bernard Shaw wants is nothing but the negative things that people started to write about Islam when? Later, in the 19th and the 20th century. And when certain group of people suddenly appeared. And then I say, how those people, how they speak about Islam and they bring Quran from here and this and that. And I'm an ordinary person. I never thought of Islam as a violent religion. So it means someone must be behind those people, feeding them and giving them what they need to continue. So let's move to the... And he was by far the most remarkable man that ever set foot on this earth. He preached a religion, founded a state, built a nation, laid down a moral code, initiated numerous social and political reforms. He established a powerful and dynamic society to practice and represent his teachings, and completely revolutionized the worlds of human thought and behavior for all times to come. You know that once I gave a lecture and I brought the American Constitution and I brought the Medina Charter. This is when Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam started his life in Medina, and how he dealt as majority, not as a minority, not as a weak, but as a strong nation. And he had minorities under him. See how the Medina Charter, and compare it to the First Amendment and the Constitution of the United States, you will find that this Constitution is derived from there. Non-Muslims, they don't like to hear that. But the Medina Charter is hidden. And Muslims for one reason or another, are not interested really to highlight it. But if you highlight the Medina Charter and how Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam gave the people the rights for religion, their right and their freedom to worship the way they want. Even the atheists were allowed, and they continued worshipping idols. Even those. So look, this man, if he says that, it means he knows what he is saying. Next. So, next. Okay, so as we said, 570 started his mission of preaching the religion of truth, Islam, submission, and at the age of 40, and departed from this world at the age of 63. That's the summary. Next. The mission. During this short period of 23 years of his prophethood, he changed the complete Arabian Peninsula from paganism and idolatry to submission to the Creator, from tribal quarrels and wars to national solidarity and cohesion, from drunkenness and debauchery to sobriety and piety, from loneliness and anarchy to disciplined living, from utter bankruptcy to the highest standards of moral excellence. Now, this thing never happened in the history of the world for a person to do these things without war. Now, don't tell me, oh yeah, there was war. They had Badr and Uhud and that. Never look at these things as war, because the Muslims were simply just protecting themselves. Someone attacking them. So this was not a war to impose something, a system. It was never. So you find that Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, accomplished all these things without war. In Mecca, when you study his life, 13 years, how Islam entered Medina, you think? It's from Mecca. How Islam entered Mecca? It's from Mecca. There was no war. On the contrary, Muslims were oppressed there. And inshallah, I'll talk about that later on. Let's move now. Okay, this is Michael Hart. And if you can get chance to read this book, Rating of Man. What he said, he ranked Muhammad first in the list. That's not what he said, but he did that. Who contributed towards the benefit and uplift of mankind. This is here what he says. This is not, Michael Hart was not a Muslim. But you never know how the truth comes. And even from the time of the Negus, the king al-Najashi, and his contribution to the Muslims, and he's not a Muslim, but he was a pious person. So he said, my choice of Muhammad to lead the list of the world's most influential persons may surprise some readers and may be questioned by others, but he was the only man in history who was supremely successful on both the religious and secular levels. This is where I said, go to Medina Charter and read it and see how he put the religion and the secular together, and how this man is responding to those who say, oh, Muslims cannot live Islam today because Islam is outdated. Secularism is the answer. And we have secularism in America, and you see how religion is very important in America. But that's the way they want to show it. They want to show it in this way. Why? Because when you look at the time of the Crusaders and the time in Europe and even in America, and how people in the name of Christianity, how they behaved and they did, that's why those people, so the people today, they don't want to bring the religion. Because once you bring religion, you put it on, you find some crazy people who will come and say, I want to rule this one. But on the contrary, you find that each one choose Islam. I choose Islam because I'm convinced of this religion. My children follow Islam, not because they are afraid of me, but because they read about Islam. So here you find the people really adhering to Islam, and you find the building of the masajid and the schools here is so amazing, and no one is forcing anyone to accept the truth of the religion. Let's move now. Okay. This is Lamartine, the renowned historian, speaking of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, if greatness of purpose, smallness of means, and astounding results are the three criteria of a human genius, we could dare to compare any great man in modern history with Muhammad. Remember here, there's no one paid this man to say that. You have to keep that in mind. No one invited him, like the Muslims did not make nice banquet for him, and then he started to say that this man, he said it by himself after reading. He read the Quran, he read the history of Muhammad, and that's his conclusion. Next. The most famous men created arms, laws, and empires only. They founded, if anything at all, no more than material powers, which often crumbled away before their eyes. Wow. You got Napoleon. This man moved not only armies, legislation, empires, peoples, and dynasties, but millions of men, of people, in 1/3 of the then inhabited world. And more than that, he moved the altars, the gods, the religions, the ideas, the beliefs and souls. He moved them. Next. His forbearance in victory, his ambition, which was entirely devoted to one idea and in no manner striving for an empire, his endless prayers, his mystic conversations with God, his death and his triumph after death. All these attest not to an imposture, but to a firm conviction which gave him the power to restore a dogma. This dogma was twofold: the unity of God and the immateriality of God. The former telling what God is, the latter telling what God is not. The one overthrowing false gods with the sword, the other starting an idea with the words. See, he did his with the words, not with the sword. This is Lamartine also. He described him as philosopher, orator, apostle, legislator, warrior, conqueror of ideas, restorer of rational dogmas, and of a cult without images, the founder of 20 terrestrial empires, and of one spiritual empire, that is Muhammad. As regards all the standards by which human greatness may be measured, we may well ask, is there any man greater than he? Again, this is the man of the old history, and this is what he said. Okay, thank you. The world has had its share of great personalities. personalities, but these were one-sided figures who distinguished themselves in but one or two fields, such as religious thought or military leadership. The lives and teachings of these great personalities of the world are shrouded in the mist of time. There is so much speculation about the time and the place of their birth, the mode and style of their life, the nature and detail of their teachings, and the degree and measure of their success or failure, that it is impossible for humanity to reconstruct accurately the lives and teachings of these men. Next. Now we go beyond the Abrahamic faith. Those are the Hindus and the Buddhists. And this is one of them, Sharma, said Muhammad was the soul of kindness, and his influence was felt and never forgotten by those around him. And this is Edward Gibbon. I believe in one God, and Muhammad, an apostle of God's, is the simple and invariable profession of Islam. The intellectual image of the deity has never been degraded by any visible idol. The honor of the Prophet has never transgressed the measure of human virtues, and his living precepts have restrained the gratitude of his disciples within the bounds of reason and religion. Next. So he is not God. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was nothing more or less than a human being, but he was a man with a noble mission, which was to unite humanity on the submission to one and only God, and to teach them the way to ideal and upright living based on the commands of the Creator. Now, remember how Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam prohibited the Muslims to stand up for him when he enters. He said, no, you don't do that. Why? Because he doesn't want the people to think of him as a person of divinity. So he always described himself as a servant and messenger of God. And so indeed, every action of his proclaimed to be. Next. And this is a lady. It was the first religion that preached and practiced democracy. Wow, that's a very strong statement. For in the mosque, when he called for prayer, is sounded and worshippers are gathered together, the democracy of Islam is embodied 5 times a day when the peasant and king kneel side by side and proclaims God alone is great. That's Allah Akbar. I have been struck over and over again by this individual unity of Islam that makes man instinctively a brother. And this is another person. The League of Nations, founded by the Prophet of Islam, put the principle of international unity and the human brotherhood on such universal foundations as to show candor to other nations. And he continued, the fact is that no nation of the world can show a parallel to what Islam has done towards the realization of the idea of the League of Nations, like how Islam has the power to bring unity to people. And the world has not hesitated to raise to divinity individuals whose lives and missions have been lost in legend. Historically speaking, none of these legends achieved even a fraction of what Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam accomplished. And all his striving was for the sole purpose of uniting mankind for the worship of one God on the codes of moral excellence. And Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam or his followers never at any time claimed that he was a son of God or the God incarnate of a man with divinity, but he always was and is even today considered as only a messenger chosen by God. So let us, I think we'll stop here. There are many things here, but they all bring the same idea. So I can stop here and come have some discussion if you want to have any question or debate certain issues around us today. As you see that people are aware of the reality of Islam, but really when they see on the ground how Muslims are behaving, it's totally different story it becomes to them. And some people, of course, we have two kinds of audience here. One audience who would hate on Islam and Muslims. Another audience who would just hate on the Muslims of the way they are treating the religion, actually. But regardless, we have to remember that even like whether you want to talk about Hinduism or Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, or any other, the followers, soon after the departure of the founders, were shattered. So today's Muslims are heading toward that. We are like kind of shattered. And there is a kind of division, which I would say it will always happen. And I want you to just reflect on the history after the death of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and see how Muslims started to behave after the death of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can understand from that time until today that what is happening, it's because we are human. We are human. And Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that's why I kept praying, my ummah, my ummah, my ummah, oh Allah, my ummah. What's going to happen to them? And Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he spoke of his concern about the Muslims, and he was told, "Awamin qillatin nahnu," he said, we are great in number. We are not few. We are not minority. No more. Then he said, "Yes, but you are ghutha ka ghutha as-sayl." Give the example of the waves hit the shore and create this kind of foam, but the foam disappeared immediately. Muslims of the past lived with the understanding that we have to, bring more children and this and that. But what happened today, it proved that the idea of having too many children, it did not work that way. Because you find the attack against Islam today from inside the Muslim world, the Muslim body. And I don't know if anyone paid attention to that. There was an incident in Tripoli, Lebanon, not your Tripoli, Lebanon. A minister owns a library, and this library has many rare books, different, including about Islam. And this library in seconds was burned to ashes by what they say, the Muslims. Why? That one employee who's not a Muslim entered the library to copy some pages from the book, from a book that criticized Islam. So the people who were observing, they thought that the owner of the library, since he's Christian, he is dishonoring Islam and he wants to publicize something against Islam. So some Muslims get angry, burn the library, and after that it turned out that the book was written by someone, his name Ahmed Qadi, and has all poison. Look at this, those are non-Muslims, and see how they speak of Islam, and this is a Muslim. His mind is set like that. And we always speak of those who are entering Islam, but we need also to focus on those who are exiting Islam, because there is a kind of confusion today, as I mentioned yesterday in Khutbat al-Jum'ah. The young Muslims are confused. And don't be surprised if some of them turn to Christianity, or some of them say they don't want anything to do with their religion, because those people they lack details about Islam. They don't have that knowledge. And then on the other side, they look and they see people with big beards and turban and people doing things not acceptable. Even the common sense not acceptable. And then they just say, they conclude within themselves that this religion is serious, it's no good, stay away from it. So some, they just isolate themselves, but others, they choose to criticize without knowledge. So we Muslims today, we have a great responsibility toward ourselves, not toward the non-Muslims. And just when you look at the different Muslim countries and you see how things going, it is amazing. My wife told me that she read an advertisement. A Muslim lady, and by the way, it was hijab. She's looking for a woman, Muslim woman, to work in a country in the Gulf area in public relation, and she needs to have this woman need to have Master of Business, MBTA, Business Administration, and they don't want a woman with hijab. They don't want with hijab. So my wife started to communicate that if it's in America, we will sue the people and this. And the woman responded and said, look, I'm trying to help the Lebanese. I'm trying to get someone from Lebanon. That's what they want. This job involves dealing with non-Muslims and this and that, and I don't know why they want it this way. And if you go beyond that, you will find that the people saying, oh, we are afraid if we get someone with hijab, and if she turns fanatic, she's gonna chase away the customers. That's in their mind. So we have responsibility really to look again at our religion and to present it the way those people read about Islam and they get into the conclusion that you said. We have to present it in its way as an appealing system of life. Any question? Yes.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I know you teach at Merrimack College, okay, and you have wealth of information to give us. So what I suggest, get him once, let him speak his experience there. It's a very important. We need to get that. So go ahead. You agree with me or no?
I am sorry, no, I think you're mistaken for when somebody looks.
But you're not at Merrimack College?
No.
You are. What do you do?
I'm a dentist.
Oh, you are a dentist. Okay. Good. All right. I'm sorry.
Since 1993, and you and I will still forget about me. That's all right.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Yes.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. I agree with you explicitly with what you're saying, mashallah. Except with one thing.
Yeah.
You are talking to those people, actually, we always tell them, each one has responsibility on his own.
Yes.
And we should conduct ourselves as good Muslims. But may Allah bless you, you have some influence toward those, what you just described with big beards in this country, specifically in this country. I lived in this country, and I'm really very satisfied living in this country because, and I defend it, because no matter all the mixed bags, it is the best country we can live with no objection. Those Muslims who are taking the members in every mosque and they found this country, or they are misleading the people, I think the responsibility to be either placed in their place or not to be allowed, because it is very sad. They are misdirecting the Muslims to a grave area, which is really sad. One of the last Fridays, basically the Imam almost telling the people that the woman cannot even work. You cannot shake hands, you cannot do these things. And in this country, it is very sad to see it.
You know, brother, as you know that I served for 23 years at the Islamic Center in England, and when I left, someone was asked, how can you give up this Imam? And the answer came, he's too moderate. Okay, I'm too moderate. So I don't think I have influence on other Imams. Who has the influence on the Imams? People like you, to expose them. If I speak, okay, if I speak, the first thing they will say, he's jealous, that I'm jealous from the other Imam if I criticize the other Imam. But anyway, I speak the truth. I do speak the truth. I'm doing my best. And sometimes I'm not liked because I criticize, as the way you are saying, I criticize that. But inshallah, I'm hoping that things will be much better.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It looks like there is a conspiracy against Muslims.
It's
because they are Muslims, but look at those countries who are supporting them so hardly. Where the money comes from?
If someone did the conspiracy to create trouble between me and my wife, I blame myself. I don't blame the one who is doing the conspiracy. Okay, because we have to rise above these issues. If I'm strong, nobody can brainwash you, and nobody can do conspiracy against you. We all know. But what we need, we need to put a long list, like we lack this, and then work on it one by one, not like all of it. There's no way to do that. Yes, I agree with you. We have great responsibility, and we need to learn that each one of us need to do his job. And I think you asked Brother Abdullah, I don't know if he was here yesterday, and I gave some hint here yesterday that we Muslims, we have to look at today, and we have the religion. And when I spoke about the Sunnah, I said there is Sunnah that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, do it. There is a Sunnah, never did it. Or he used to do it, but he did not say to us, do it. And this is where something that we have the options. So I gave the example, even though that the example is so innocent. And I said that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to sit on the floor to eat. So, but he never said to us, eat on the floor. So I said, it's up to us. You want to sit? And you want to eat on the table? Why? He used to use his finger to eat. You want to use your finger to eat? It's fine. You want to take the fork and knife? And then, I had purpose of mentioning that. But I don't want to go deeper. Otherwise, people will start. So I gave just these examples. And when we look at the Sunnah, we have to distinguish between something that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said to us to not do it. I said that he used to eat by his hand, but he never said to us, use your hand. But what he said, use your right hand. Sammillah. He said, tasmiyah is very important. We have to teach our children. We can tell them, look, when you grow up, it's up to you whether you want to eat with your fingers or you want to have the fork. And it's up to you. The siwak today, and I mentioned the siwak, I said that there is brush, there's toothpaste. If you want to change from siwak to toothpaste and that, it's up to you. Because our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, except it will be hard for my ummah, I'll make the siwak as obligation. But he did not. But his sunnah is the siwak. You want to do that, it's fine. And then in the evening you go home and then you use the brush, you brush your teeth and use toothpaste. And then the modernity today calls on us to find a way of how to present ourselves to people. I remember once, there was 40 years ago, I was giving the khutbah, and after the khutbah a Muslim approached me and he said, my prayer and your prayer is spoiled. And I said, what's going on? He said, because you have a tie. You are wearing a tie. And I said, well, you are imitating the kuffar. I said, it's not part of Christianity, wearing the tie. It's something, and the people do it. He said, yeah, but you look like the cross with the tie. He said, how do I look like with the cross? He said, okay, look at the tie and your hand, and your head, and then your shoulder. This is a cross. So what's wrong with the cross? He said, why the cross is worshipped by Christians. He said, will you leave me alone? Please leave me alone. I don't want to. I like wearing a tie. That's it. So until today, there are Muslims who would say that tie is not part of Islam. Which, myself, I don't find it a problem if a Muslim. But, going to other extremes and showing Islam as backward religion, this is where the problem. If someone, and what I mentioned yesterday in my khutbah, that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said he used to tell the leaders when he sent them to do a mission outside, he said, if you was in charge of people and people ask you to rule us by the book of Allah, never do that. He said, rule them by your opinion, because you don't know what the book of Allah is. So he told them, لا تنزل الناس على حكم الله لأنك لا تدري ما حكم الله. He said, أنزلوهم على رأيكم. So today, if I want, I don't have to say, oh, Thai is like Christianity or something, but I'll say, I feel more comfortable like that. You know, I put Thai, today I'm not. But you can say, I feel more comfortable without a tie. Nobody is going to say anything. But to say that it's un-Islamic and this and that, if someone is listening to you, what's going on? Those Muslims are crazy. So, yes, there are these details. And remember, today's Muslims, whether you or me or that, we are not people of like students of scholars. You know, I took the time, I went to university. That's how I studied Islam. But how many of you had this chance? All what you learned about Islam is from people, when you look at their social life with due respect, and you find them that there is something with them. They're not professionals. They are not trained. They are not oriented. You are a dentist. You go for orientation every year. You refresh your knowledge about dentistry and this and that every year, every month. There is no refresh today. If someone happened to read a book 200 years ago, that's it. That's the book said that. I'm not willing really to rethink what the book says and the ideas, the debate. And when we sit down to debate, you have people ready to accuse you of something. Too much opening, too much moderate, too much this, too much that. So these things we need to address it in discussion, and we need to open our hearts to hear each other without accusing and saying, you are less Iman and you are less religion and I'm stronger than you. You know, Allah will take care of that. So just...
Yes. Question. How do you differentiate between what Prophet Muhammad's Sunnah is and what his personal likes and dislikes were? Because sometimes we follow those personal likes and dislikes and assume that those are part of the Sunnah.
Okay. The hadith is, مَا نَهَيْتُكُمْ عَنْهُ فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ. If I prohibited you of doing something, then treat it as haram. And then مَا أَمَرْتُكُمْ بِهِ فَأْتُوا مِنْهُ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. And if I told you do that, then do it to the best of your ability, as much as you can. And here we say the sunnah is different kind. There is a sunnah that Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to do it. He did not tell us to do it. And I brought the example of the siwak. He said, so I brought the example of eating on the floor, but there are other things. Look at your life, okay? When you say that I'm doing sunnah, I'm following the sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, all right, check this sunnah. If he ever said do this, and then it becomes part of the Islamic law. But if he never said do this, but he used to do it, then it's up to you. And try not to enter the area into this, oh, if I do it, it will be better for me. And try not to enter into the area of looking at a person who's not doing what you do and accuse the person of being less religion. So there's nothing wrong to look at all these things and form your life accordingly. So Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what do we hear? Then he said that كان يقوم من الليل حتى تتورم قدمه. He used to do the qiyam prayers until his feet is swollen, right? Did he say to you that? So if you decided to do that, it is your choice. And if you decided to do that, you will not become better than other Muslims who are not doing that. It's a matter of your life, your choice. You like to wake up during the night, and you have يا أيها المزمل يا أيها المدثر no يا أيها المزمل قم الليل إلا قليلا. Do the qiyam except little bit of the night. He said نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا, half of the night or little than half, أو زد عليه or more than half, 2/3 of the night, 1/3, half. It's him, not us. Now he did that, but he did not tell the Muslims do the qiyam. He said sharaful Muslim or izzul Muslim, the full dignity of the Muslim is qiyamul layl. Just qiyamul layl. Even if you stand up for 2 minutes and you do the qiyam, do it. Now, I have today a person who works like long hours, and he has to pay the bills and this and this and that, and he'll tell you, look, I barely have the time to wake up for Fajr, and most of the time I pray Fajr after the time. And you're going to tell me you are preaching on me to do the qiyam? So when we speak about different issues, you have to present it as is. That this qiyam is something to benefit you, and it will not make you superior to anyone. Because inna akramakum inda Allah atqakum. So whoever has taqwa and this and that, Allah will be aware of that. So we choose different way to live our life. Some of us is overburdened with responsibilities. Some not. Some start overburdened, and then later on they take a break and this and that. And you find people they go for Hajj and they go to the masjid more. They go for qiyam and this and that. And then people will say, "Oh, now you started. Before we used to chase you to get you to the masjid." So people are people. So this is how you approach the sunnah, by investigating everything you do. So by wearing the pants now, you're not following the sunnah. All right? Yeah. So what do we do? Am I following the sunnah? I have this. So, yeah. You investigate everything. And if you said that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to have long dress, never had these pants. So, is it sunnah to wear the dishdasha? No. Yeah. Because he never said, wear this. And when he said, follow my sunnah, he never meant that everything he does that you have to imitate. But if you choose, it is your personal choice and nothing else. So today, when I see the brothers of the Tabligh, the way they dress up, and then I respect them. But if they came to me to criticize me that I'm less Islam than them, I say I don't accept that. You choose this way, you are saved. And you have today a woman who chooses to put the hijab and put the long dress and everything, and then she would look at another Muslim woman and criticize her because she's not wearing like her. Maybe the other woman has half hijab, pants and something, and we dress up differently today, whether man or woman. And then you have this competition going on. So when we start, describing each other by way of these things, the way we dress, the way we eat, the way this, and that we are better Muslim or this or that, and that's the problem. And today, we Muslims, sometimes we say, I'm a good Muslim. I go to the masjid and I do the prayer. I said, you be careful saying I'm a good Muslim, because you are telling others that they are no good. So what we say, I can say, I practice my religion to the best of my ability. I make sure that I go to the masjid. Describe how the masjid is beautiful when you speak with others, Muslims I'm saying. But never give them the impression that you are hinting at them as lazy, as weak Muslims, as something bad with them, because they'll hate you immediately. And then we'll start seeing differences between us. Then you will start finding the women who are not putting the hijab, then they start hating those who have the hijab. And those who are having the hijab, they hate those without the hijab. They look at them down, as they are people who are going to hellfire. And those who pray, they look at the one who do not pray as someone who will be the fuel of hellfire. This is the religion. And then they bring something that the Shafi'i or the Hanafi or a scholar, he said this. They bring a hadith, بين الإسلام والكفر ترك الصلاة. That between Islam and kufr is to not to pray. So then you tell someone who's not praying that he is kafir. And remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you about the Christians. He said, Christians and Jews, he said, you speak to them nicely. You don't offend them. Never tell a Christian that they are in error. That because they consider Jesus with a divine nature, and that Islam did not tell you to do that. So and today those who hit hard on Islam, you know what they have? They have with them videotapes of Ahmad Didat, rahimahullah. Ahmad Didat, he dedicated himself to attack Christianity. And this created a generation of others who felt offended, and then they started to hit on Islam as an exchange. While you find that of course I'm not saying anything, Ahmad Didat, he was brought up in an environment different than American environment. Therefore, in America he did not have that much popular. He came a couple of times, but not that much, because the Muslims realized the way he is attacking Christianity, it doesn't work in America. But in Africa, it's different, because there everybody is cursing everybody. But when you get to the Quran, you find that the Quran said, you speak with them nicely, eat their food, invite them to your house, never offend them, never swear at their religion. Why? And then in other way, you find that the Quran is saying that لَقَدْ كَفَرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الْمَسِيحُ ابْنُ مَرْيَمَ. So they are kuffar, those who say that Allah is Jesus. You find this is theology. This is a fact that I cannot ignore it. And if I am speaking about how the theology of Islam view Christianity, I'm going to bring verses from the Quran, what the Quran says about the theology of the Christians. That they do this, they do this, they do that. But I said, if I'm talking to you as a human being, it's different. I'm not going to bring to you what the Quran says about you. You go and read the Quran, and I'm proud of every letter of the Quran and every word. Because despite that the Quran says that, the Quran says that I have to treat you very well, and I have to be nice to you. So if you want if you want to criticize Islam because it says this, you have to love Islam because Islam also says this. And so we Muslims, when we speak to Christians and Jews, don't never concentrate on the negatives. You can bring the negatives and bring the positives also. And bring what the Quran says, that some, they are laysu sawa, they are not equal. من أهل الكتاب, so the people of the book, Ummah قائمة. They stand for prayers. They read the scripture, they cry when they hear the scripture. Say, that's what the Quran says about you. So the Quran says this, the Quran says that. So you can see the balance. Right? Time to eat. Inshallah, we'll be again. Next week we're going to have entertainment.
Inshallah.
So not me.
We'll let you know.
Yeah, inshallah.
Update.